right, what's happening, everybody? Welcome back to episode 2 of the Pavement Group podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about prioritizing your pavement budget. So I am joined by my co-pilots here, Mr. Mike Hoodkeem and Mr. Todd Gurrell. Welcome back, fellas. Thanks for joining me.
Great to be here, Brian. Thanks for having us.
Thanks
for having me, Brian.
So we are going to dig right in here, guys. We've got 5 talking points here that we're going to cover. I want to get those out there just in case one that's later on might spark somebody's interest. We're going to talk about proactive versus reactive maintenance. We're going to talk about safety versus aesthetics, or safety and aesthetics. The most important parts of pavement maintenance, we're going to break that down. Number 4 is an interesting one. The squeaky wheel drains the budget. And last but not least, pavement assessments and how they provide the best way to effectively manage your pavement budget. So let's dig right in here to proactive versus reactive maintenance strategies. Todd, I'll tee this one up for you first. You know, what have you seen over your career in the pavement industry? And let's just kind of go around here and get everybody's perspective on proactive versus reactive, the benefits and the drawbacks of both of those.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think it's going to go essentially to what we're going to talk about in number 5. But number 1, you know, having good set of data, having good assessments and all that sort of stuff to be able to make these decisions. And that's what allows you to be either proactive or reactive. You know, a lot of times things are driven by money. They're driven by the budget. Not a lot of times, almost all the time. And things get let go. When you truly understand the cost of letting something go, the smaller dollars of maintenance make a whole lot more sense. But you got to really see that. And again, there's a lot of factors that play into that. But you know, if you can see what a pothole turns into across a 200,000 square foot parking lot over time, you'd never think that. But genuinely, it's got that spider effect. It's got that ripple effect when you're not taking care of things, when you're not filling cracks and all that sort of stuff. So what I see is folks don't necessarily appreciate spending the small dollars to keep from having to spend the big dollars down the road. And that's the biggest thing in reactive versus being proactive.
Yeah, I think I would add to that, man. One of the things that I say frequently, people on our team probably get tired of hearing me say it, but I say, you know, sometimes you have to slow down to speed up, right? And we say that in a variety of different things, but ultimately in the proactive versus reactive thing, it's like literally to get to that point of being able to be proactive, you kind of have to slow down a little bit and almost, you know, take the time out to be able to get your arms around the proactive approach, because it takes time to collect the data to even be able to make a sensible approach to that. So Mike, what do you have to add? You've got a lot of experience dealing with shifting customers from reactive, which, you know, most of the customers that we engage right away are in, I would say 90%, maybe even 100% of the ones that we bring on are typically in a majority reactive state. And our kind of role in our relationship with our prospects and customers is to try to, you know, make that shift for them anywhere that we can, if that's possible. So what is your experience in dealing with proactive versus reactive?
First, you have to break them out of that mentality, of the reactive mentality. You have to try to make them understand, or make somebody understand, that they're going to spend 4 to 5 times the amount of money over the next 2 years as they would if they were to start to get on a proactive maintenance plan. Once you get them off that type of, or once you get somebody off of that type of mentality, then you have to come up with a starting point. I mean, you have to, like you said, stop what you're doing, think about it, get the data, and then restart this new plan. I mean, that's the only way you can do it. So.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the most important thing for the property and facility managers that are out there, one of the things we say when we go through this process with people and trying to get them converting is we say it's evolution, not revolution. We're not trying to up dump the apple cart and just stop everything. We're trying to take that kind of tiered, intentional approach of collecting all the data, getting out there, seeing what's there, and starting to really get our arms around what is a portfolio view or a regional view of a portfolio where we can make sense of it. And once we get that data collected, we take it back to the customer and we show them what the proactive maintenance strategy looks like, I would say every single time that we've done this for a customer, and Mike, you can chime in here, they've been pleasantly surprised by the results of how close they were in the amount of money that they had versus what they needed. Because once we look at it from a high level, and we're going to dig into this in some of the other topics, but what we find is that some of the money that they were allocating was probably going to places that maybe it wasn't as needed because of a variety of different reasons, whether, busy stores or a store manager, a location manager that, was just constantly bringing up this particular parking lot, and that gets moved to the top of the list. But when we get in front of these things and we get to that point of being able to quarterback that proactive approach for people, they're typically pleasantly surprised. Wouldn't you agree?
I do agree, yes. And it's not like we had to stop. I mean, we really just need to find a starting point, whether it's like we've done in the past, go out and crack seal 100 properties to get them all on the same playing field. And then we can start to decipher which ones are going to need larger budgets and which ones are going to need smaller budgets. But yeah, you have to start somewhere, and that's really what we have to do.
Yeah, and protect what you got, right, is step one.
Right.
Protect what you've got, invest
Correct.
the money. And we're going to get into that here in bullet point number 3. But let's move on to number 2. So we've got safety versus aesthetics. And, from our standpoint, what we typically do is try to advise people for both. But in certain situations, and maybe, Todd, we could talk through a couple of those situations of sometimes safety is a little bit more important to a client. Sometimes both is important, and sometimes aesthetics is a really, really big deal for a client. So talk about some of those different scenarios that you've encountered and which kind of scenarios apply to which types of customers.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, liability is going to be, especially if you have a retail environment, let's say, or a restaurant environment, something like that, that liability where you've got people in and out, tons of traffic, there's a lot of unpredictability there. I think of liability, which is safety, as the first kind of a thing, right? What kind of position are you putting yourself in and your employees in by not taking good care of that? I remember a guy that owned a bunch of Taco Bells told me years and years ago that we do 80% of our business through the drive-through. Therefore, our parking lot is our lobby, and we got to treat it as such. And it's, from a safety standpoint, but then that gets into the aesthetics. Nobody wants to eat in a dirty dining room. Literally, if that's what they're considering to be their lobby, nobody wants to see. So it goes into the, keeping up the parking lot in the landscape and the paint and the exteriors. That's why you're constantly seeing these fast food companies change their image, change the look and feel of a Burger King, of a McDonald's, of a Taco Bell, that sort of thing, because they view it that way. So I don't think, especially with what we do, we're contractors, we're construction guys, it's always safety first. So if you had to rank them, obviously it's safety, but the aesthetics piece of it is right there for those types of businesses. We have other businesses that really can't focus as much. A busy grocery store, they don't tend to seal coat. They might crack fill, they might get into the maintenance cycle, that sort of thing. But it's not that the aesthetics aren't important. It's just not what's driving their business. People are parking, coming in. They don't want to take up half a parking lot at a time to seal coat them. So I'd say there, just making sure people are completely safe might be the priority.
Yep. And Mike, you've dealt with a variety of different types of verticals and different types of customers with regard to safety and aesthetics. What have you seen, property and facility managers prioritizing safety over aesthetics in certain situations?
Well, with my background, I'm going to say I always think safety first because I'm always analytical. I'm trying to make sure that scopes are built properly. So aesthetics is usually the second to me, but I've also seen where, in larger HOAs and stuff that, they're pretty safe already and they want to have nice, clean cut lines. People are paying large amounts of money for CAM and common area maintenance and whatnot. So they want to have their stuff looking good. And, it depends. And you see it in commercial world too, because you're going to have an upscale commercial development that they need to have black driveways or parking lots. They need to have white concrete, and they don't want to have any little movement or anything like that. But personally, my aspect of our business is probably safety first. And that's just through the years, that's where I've gone. So
You
Yeah.
know, one thing I've noticed too is a lot of times that methodology matches sort of the brand very closely. Jordan's
Yeah.
Furniture is up in New England. They're a big furniture chain up here, very, very well branded. They got a great, sort of a personality and a brand up here. The owners are very active in Boston. They have purple lines in their parking lot that matches the purple on their sign, and they seal coat them every year, keep them, I mean, really, really tight, really neat. That's very important to them. And they want the entire experience. So the minute you park in their parking lot, you feel like you're at a first-class place. You walk in, their showrooms are amazing. And I find that kind of across the board, that sort of matches up with the way people sort of present their business, whether it's going to be how important the aesthetics are to them. Some businesses are get in and get out. We're going to give it to you as cheap as possible. Sometimes their parking lots match that,
I would agree, man. Great point. And to wrap that one up and move on to the next one here, I would say that, when you think about safety and aesthetics, from our approach as a contractor, we don't want you to have to choose. In some cases, like Todd said, the brand, the way that they do things, the way that they run their business, sometimes, the aesthetics is a little less important than functionality, right? Like they don't want to shut their parking lot down to do certain things for the customer experience, things like that. And we're going to touch on this later, but the whole idea of pavement assessments and getting that data and getting the facts in front of you is to be able to evaluate both of those things simultaneously, to be able to look at exactly what the parking lot looks like, and how safe it is at the same exact time. And so when we get into pavement assessments, we'll talk about that in more detail. But, the reality is, as a contractor, we want to be able to offer property and facility managers both of those options at whatever level of detail they would like to choose. So moving on to number 3, the most important parts of pavement maintenance. We want to talk about some crack sealing, some line striping, the ABCs of pavement maintenance, and how annual inspections of these properties and keeping up on that stuff is important. So Mike, let me kick that one over to you first, because your experience in this department is pretty extensive with regard to planning those types of things and getting them on a cycle, and the impact that makes to simplify the role of the project manager or the property manager on site for these types of properties.
My first instinct is crack seal, crack seal, crack seal. It's the best money that can be spent for various reasons. And in some markets, not so much, but really in the markets that we're in, crack sealing is the best money you can spend. Whether you've got $0 or you got $5 million, that's the first place I see spending money at. But then really what getting on this maintenance plan is to have a bunch of information in front of you and the data that you need to have to be able to spend your dollars in proper ways. I mean, you have to be able to get this information in front of you and give it to your people to be able to use that data to decipher where you can spend your dollars. The best, I can't say it enough, crack seal, crack seal, crack seal. I mean, I guess.
I think one of the things that comes to mind, man, is the conversation that we have quite often is what we try to take pride in our company is, everybody's got an assigned budget, right? And they have X amount of dollars that they can spend on their properties. And what we try to pride ourselves on is not being necessarily the lowest price, but the company that provides you with the best value for that overall budget. So if you're going to spend $10,000 on your pavement assets, what we're trying to do, and to Mike's point, starting with protecting what you have. And that starts a lot of times with crack sealing. If you've got cracks on an existing parking lot and you don't address those, that situation is going to continue to deteriorate. If you don't get a line striping program in place, again, you're going to shift yourself and your portfolio into a strictly reactive maintenance situation. If you do that on a planned maintenance schedule, you're going to reduce the cost as a result of being able to award those on a larger scale, and you're going to increase the efficiency at which you can get those done. And again, as a property facility manager, you want to do that for 2 reasons. Number 1, it is way easier to manage. Number 2, it is going to drive down the cost of that when you can do that at a larger scale, to your point earlier of doing 100 sites or line striping 50 at a time. You're going to get a much better cost for those jobs than you would if you were just reacting to things and sending them off one at a time to have those done. Todd, anything to add there on crack sealing, line striping, and what you've seen the impact of annual inspections on properties have on those critical parts of pavement maintenance?
Well, I think if there was 100 squares up on the Zoom of people that have been in asphalt maintenance for any amount of time, everybody would say crack filling first. I mean, Mike nailed it. It's the best bang for the buck. It genuinely works. I want to ask you guys, what do you say when a customer says to you, I don't believe in seal coating. I don't think it does anything for the parking lot. Because we didn't really touch too much on seal coating. What do you say to that, Brian?
I would say that, number one, it absolutely has value because it does a couple of things. Number one, it locks in the things that are most important to the asphalt surface. It helps lock those things in. It helps protect against the elements, against traffic, against weather, against all of the elements that are constantly deteriorating a pavement surface. For the customers, the big box grocery stores, retailers, things like that, that choose not to seal coat, I understand that to some degree because, they've got wear marks, they have heavy traffic, there's not much they can do. They don't like the aesthetic look of having those patterns worn into their parking lot. So right. I understand that, but I want to make it clear to people that are listening that may have that same opinion that there is absolutely value to taking the time to put your properties on a seal coating schedule. And it will, over a period of time, it will double the life of your parking lot by implementing these maintenance type strategies. Mike, would you agree?
I would agree. And I think the seal coating process is almost, we call it in the assessment process, almost like a checkup, because if you got somebody coming back there to seal coat every couple of years, you're going to do those other maintenance things that need to be done too at the same time. And we've proven that a parking lot that is maintained or on a maintenance cycle is going to actually live longer than what one is not. So whether it's just seal coating or because you're getting the opinion of a professional at that point in time every single time that they come out there. So it all kind of goes in the whole process of what we're trying to build here. So
yeah, and I would add to that one of the things that we offer, and if anybody's listening that is interested in this type of thing, you can just shoot us an email to info@thepavementgroup.com. We've got some calculators that will actually show you, total cost of ownership, because that's really what we're worried about. What is the total cost of ownership of owning a 100,000 square foot parking lot, a 50,000 square foot parking lot? What does that look like with replacement if you do nothing or if you plan proper maintenance and that lifespan of what it costs to replace it in 10 years versus 15 versus 30, right? What does it look like when you start to extend the lifespan of that pavement surface out? Total cost of ownership for any property and facility manager out there is what you should really be focused on, is what does it cost me over the long term to own this pavement asset? And our job as contractors and people guiding you through this process of prioritizing your pavement budget is to make that total cost of ownership as low as possible, right? So let's move on to number 4. The squeaky wheel drains the budget. So what I mean by that is that, you got a lot of locations, and this one, it makes everybody on the screen smile because everybody has encountered it at some point where we are working on a project and we go out to look at it, and we're pretty familiar with a larger portfolio. We know how many properties are not in great condition, and we get to one that's in pretty decent condition, and we're trying to figure out why this particular property is being replaced. And we might, in some cases, run into a store manager that gives you a little smile when you start interacting with them, and you hear how passionate they are about the condition of their parking lot, and you start to be able to figure out why the money is being allocated to this location. Sometimes you're wondering, man, is this a really busy location, or is it this? And you end up asking these questions of the property or facility manager, and what you come to the conclusion of is that this property has been talked about so much that it has literally been moved to the top of the list as far as replacing that parking lot or doing significant maintenance work on that parking lot. And so, Mike, I want you to take this one first because we've been through this a bunch together, and talk about some of those scenarios and then what it looks like when we do the larger portfolios and we get a 30,000 foot view of hundreds of properties, and sometimes where those properties end up is not exactly where maybe the property and facility manager would have thought they would rank in order of importance.
Well, it's out of sight, out of mind, right? I mean, if you don't see the sites or you don't know about your sites, that site is obviously only going to get the reactive maintenance. And then you've got one manager over on, or store manager, like you said, over on this side who calls for every single pothole, a crooked line or something like that. And that would be the top of the mind for the property manager. And they just, that's the only thing they know. They might not get a chance to, most property managers are probably in charge of what, 15 to 50 properties. I've had customers tell me that they've never even seen the properties that they are in charge of. I mean, there's 8 to 10 of the properties that they've never even seen, and they have no idea what's going on these locations. And if the manager up there is less proactive than the manager right next door to them or somebody down the street, they're not going to be able to see what's going on that property. So it's a sticky situation because a lot of times the money will get spent in the wrong areas, and then being able to go take 150 of these properties at one time, it's like you said, people have been surprised. I've seen it. They're like, well, what about this one? Well, I think that's a 6. It's probably 2 years down the road from really needing any major stuff. And then they're like, well, the guy's been telling me for the last 3 years that there's people falling in potholes out there. And, you know, instead of driving out there, now they've got this information in front of them because we did 150 of them at one time.
Yeah. Todd, I'm sure you've got plenty of experience in this department too, of seeing properties that, you know, seem like they're imperative to get to, and then you get there and you're wondering, man, what is the deal here? It doesn't seem to line up with what I've seen over this entire portfolio.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. When I first started working in asphalt maintenance, a guy that was training me showed me how you go to a retail strip center, you find the potholes. This is when you're out prospecting. And then you find whichever store owner parks closest to that pothole, you go in and ask that person for the owner of the center's name. Who runs this place? And right away they're going to tell you. And that, you got the squeaky wheel there. But the other side of the coin, a lot of facilities managers give us a heads up, and I'm sure you guys have gotten this before, to say, you're going to get out there, they're going to want to repave the whole place. You know, we don't have it in the budget, so just manage the expectations. And sure enough, you get out there and you can see what they're talking about, what they're warning you about. But yeah, just knowing where the best place to spend your money is such a valuable tool. And that's why, again, back to what Mike said, the assessments tool is so key, because you're not guessing and you're not going on. I mean, people that run smaller type facilities, they could have 150 locations. I used to work with one of the big pharmacy companies. There's a guy that sat in their headquarters in the Midwest, and he had Hawaii, he had Florida. It was the craziest thing. First met with him, and this kid was like 22, just over his head first day of work, and he's like, I don't know how to get to, I got Missouri, I got Florida, I got Hawaii. It didn't make any sense. No way he's going to see all those stories. So when you have that information, you got people that you can trust, and also a professional that's going to help you manage that out in the field, someone that can actually talk to whether it's your tenants, your on-site manager, whatever, be able to interact with them in a professional way. I think that's important, to have someone that you trust to do that. So yeah, it's but I've seen it many, many times. The squeaky wheel definitely gets the budget spend.
Yeah, and I would just tell you guys, when we're going to get into pavement assessments here, it's a perfect transition. But when you look at when we say pavement assessments, we are, to Mike's point, we're looking at a chunk of a portfolio or the whole portfolio, where we're going out, taking photos, GPS coordinated, dropping those into a map, pointing out the ones that are really severe issues, safety issues, things like that, so that when a customer is approaching how to budget, that budgeting is almost already done for them through the ability to read these pavement assessments. We would give you the entire portfolio snapshot at one time, so that, for example, you would be looking at, well, this is a 100,000 square foot parking lot here, and it's a 4, but I've got a 200,000 square foot parking lot over here that's a 2, that's really in more need than that one, even though that particular budget or that particular location has some budget assigned to it because someone was pushing us to do that. Sometimes what it is the customers of those locations or the tenants of those locations driving that sense of urgency from the property or facilities manager. And so pavement assessments are the best way to effectively manage your budget for a variety of reasons. The number one is that you get the entire snapshot in one easy to understand report that will really give you the visibility that you need. One of the things that I joke about when we talk to customers is I say, man, my 7-year-old daughter is by far not a pavement expert, but if I were to present her, if I were to just sit her down at this computer and show her your pavement assets in a portfolio scenario, she could tell me which ones are the worst. So it is truly about getting your arms around that data and being able to have that data provided to you by a contractor, and not just reacting job by job or property by property, but really having an approach that is a 30,000-foot approach of seeing the entire portfolio at one time. And it really, it's common sense decisions when you get that exercise completed and that information is right in front of you. So Mike, what I really wanted you to talk about was just, walk the listeners through how that has worked for some of our customers that we've gone through that with. What did they think before it happened? What did they think as a result of the data? And then how have we been able to effectively manage their pavement assets for less money and more effectively on a proactive basis after it's completed?
I'm just going to go with a recent example. We recently went out, like I say, 150 properties. It was actually more like 170 some properties that we went out and took pictures on every single site. And then we GPS located every single site, found anything that was wrong with or any issues that we felt they needed to be maintained on that site. And then we present that in one big package of the whole entire portfolio of the properties. And then we're able to go through and pick out certain sites that, like you said, might be a 2 on a PASE rating or a 4 on a PASE rating. And then we can start to prioritize where we're going to put our attention first. And then what we did with this client was I don't want to say stopped all maintenance at that point in time, but we had to get on a level playing field. So what we presented to them was a crack sealing plan, a striping plan, and a seal coating plan to get the properties that were not at poor or less level, to be able to get those things back to the level playing field that we need to be able to move forward on those, and then allocate budget dollars to the other side of the poor and the failing properties at that point. So they were able to shift money from some things to other things, get on this level playing field. We were able to honestly charge 25 to 30% less for the crack sealing on all of their properties that needed it at this point in time, instead of reactive saying this one needs to be done. This manager says this one needs to be done. We got 6 in this city and 2 in that city, where you're charging through 30 to 40 times the amount just to be able to get to each one individually. So we were able to see the budget dollars being put in the right spots. Then we were then also able to give them a 5-year plan, which allows them to say that this year I need to spend X amount of dollars on these properties. Next year I need to spend this much on these properties. Where is that delta on our budget for next year? Do we need to change things now, or do we need to start reacting to our budget instead of reacting to the properties? And then just for us to have the information to be able to communicate with our client when our client calls us and says, hey, I think there's a pothole at this store, the customers or the manager's telling us, we can pull that information up and look at that exact pothole and let the customer know what we recommended to do with that 2 months ago, or they decided that they didn't have the money on that at this time and we told them it needed to be done, and then the pothole continued to grow, and then we can show the difference of being able to be proactive and reactive just in that quick of a moment. So that's the biggest thing for me, is being able to have that information in front of me to be able to give the right recommendations at the right times for these 171 properties that have spent some time on.
Yeah, Mike is pretty experienced on those properties at this point. And I think, the most effective thing that I have seen out of, us being able to do this for a multitude of clients is to take the data and the facts that we collect, and then being able to back into how that stuff should be done based on, the budget that they've got. And like you're saying, the money is allocated, in certain ways, capital versus maintenance. And maybe we're able to shift some of that. Maybe we're able to take some of the maintenance money and replace one more parking lot with the savings of 30% less.
I think they got I think they planned on 3 more. There was 3 more total properties that they were able to plan on doing an actual capital project to, instead of reactive maintenance, because we allocated dollars in bunches instead of just throwing it out at 4 to 5 times the expense.
Yeah, and I think also, guys, for the listeners, it's really important to be able to back into that budget, because now they can truly forecast their spend for the rest of the year, versus the conversations that we had. They were never really familiar with what to expect the rest of the year, so they were kind of leaving this slush fund there because they don't know what's coming at them, right? They don't know what kind of work orders are going to be coming for the catch basin repair or the potholes or whatever it may be later in the season, right before you go into the winter time. There's always a rush to get those types of things done. And that approach of pavement assessments and proactive planning allows people to do that without, keeping much in the reserve at the end of the year, because they pretty much know all of the repairs that are coming outside of, maybe something that isn't predictable. But for the most part, we get our arms around all of that stuff. So, Todd, why don't you touch on real quick, just, you've seen this done a variety of different ways. And I'm interested to see, as you've joined us here at the Pavement Group and the approach that we take, what is your perspective on that? And how do you think that approach benefits property and facility managers?
Well, you just hit a key point, and 2020 is going to really illustrate this. The end of the year, that slush fund, there's a little money left over. That is money that's 100% of the time always wasted. It's just go out there, tell me what you can do, what you think needs to happen. When you have that information at the fingertips, you can take that money and say, all right, we get an extra $100,000 here at the end of the year. And especially this year, where things are going to be, a little bit of feeling out for the third quarter, fourth quarter, I believe that, things are going to start getting better and there should be some more spend there. Know exactly, be in control of that spend. Have the information at your fingertips to say, go to store number 275. Let's do that crack filling that I know needs to get done, instead of saying, hey, I got 10 grand. How should I spend it? How a contractor is going to spend it. They're going to spend it whatever their basic need is, their most major need. Well, we don't have any concrete for the last end of October. Yeah, you need some sidewalk work. That's how that money gets spent a lot of times. Industry secret, sorry, but it is, and it shouldn't be. With having that information, right there at your disposal, you can make good decisions and direct that spend to where it should be spent.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I think, that's one of the things that I am most proud of when we complete those assessments and we really give people the facts and data. One of the things that we say to our customers is we believe you should make decisions based on facts and data, not based on the opinions of 3 different contractors with regard to that one single site. Because it's not, by the way, that the contractor is trying to mislead you, but they have no visibility into what else exists in your portfolio, what else needs to be handled. And to your point, man, like when you have that information, like, what we do with these pavement assessments and giving you that portfolio view, if you have $100,000 left over, man, one of our selling points is, what if you could have your budget at your fingertips within seconds at any point in the year? Because that is genuinely what we give you. It's a complete view of exactly what you need to do. In fact, they know, to Mike's point, what they need to do year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. Those aren't perfect forecasts, but they have a plan and a strategy to them that, with the customer that Mike was talking about, we believe that by year 2 of executing this type of plan maintenance strategy, they will have a budget surplus in their pavement and with regard to parking lots. So, it is important for the listeners to realize that there are other ways to do it, right? You don't have to be on that hamster wheel of constantly being reactive to everything that's being sent from you. And I feel like, it's a breath of fresh air to property and facility managers when they no longer have to play defense, right? They're just kind of, dancing around the work orders that are coming at them, trying to figure out how they're going to pay for it when it's not expected. So if we can, get out in front of that stuff, prioritize the pavement budget appropriately, the results of that are tremendous. And to Mike's point earlier, there is a massive ability to save money over these large budgets Todd mentioned it earlier about having trust and having a real partner to be able to walk you through these things. And, you know, our job here on this podcast is not to sell you necessarily on the pavement group, but to educate you on the things that are out there. We do believe that the pavement assessments that we do are industry leading, that they are something that every single customer out there can benefit from. So if that is something that you're interested in, by all means, reach out to us, DM us on social, go to our website, or you can email us info@thepavement group, and that'll get right to us. So that was some good information, guys. I was pleasantly surprised at how well that went and how smooth it went. So I appreciate you guys being here with me, adding so much value, and appreciate what you guys do for our customers and what we all work together to do for our customers in all of the things that we just talked about. So if you guys enjoyed what you just heard here, if you got some value out of it, this podcast doesn't cost anything other than maybe you could share it with somebody else. So if you could just hit that share button, send it to somebody else, maybe another property or facility manager, or maybe a contractor out there that you think could benefit from the information that we're trying to provide here. We are going to dig into more details. If you guys like the end of this conversation here on pavement assessments, we're going to get into the power of property assessments in episode 3. So if you guys enjoyed what you heard here, you're definitely going to like the next episode, which is going to get into great detail on how those property and pavement assessments can benefit you as a property or facility manager or as a contractor. So appreciate you guys tuning in to the Pavement Group podcast, and we will be back here again with you next week. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.